Axel quickly struggled to his feet and turned to face the mirror, but Amy failed to obey. Perhaps it was the drug they'd given her so liberally. She didn't feel like standing and saw no reason why she should. It wouldn't pay. Whatever the authorities were going to do, they'd do anyhow. She wasn't going to cooperate and make it easy for them. "Don't be afraid," the man's voice assured them. "We will not harm you. Stand and face the window, Amy." Amy took a bite of fried chicken, another of butter bread, and chewed the mixture with deliberate pleasure. "You better get up, Amy," Axel whispered. "Don't make them mad." "I'm going to finish eating," she said. "I may not get the chance again. They've had hours to stare at us through that window. Why interrupt us now, except to show us they can? We're not real to them, you know. We're just something they watch on a VU screen." "Amy!" Axel was frightened. "You're wrong, Amy," the speaker said. "You are real to us. Too real. You are the first to completely breach our security precautions in 5 years. You are welcome, if only as a warning that we are growing lax." "Welcome to what?" she asked. "Why, to... You have a very literal mind." "Are you the authorities?" "That's what you call us." "Are you going to send us back to the rehabilitated?" "No." "I don't believe you." "That is of little consequence," the voice informed her. "I admit that we did consider returning you, but decided in your case it would be pointless. Your kind exists to supply us with the goods and services we need. To be effective, rehabilitation will result in 2 more non-reproductive consumers, useless eaters. We have enough of those already." Amy didn't understand much beyond the fact that the authorities said they were not going to be sent back. "What are you going to do to us?" she asked, putting down a drumstick bone polished clean. "Your phrasing implies we are insensitive. Since you are both intelligent, will you let us go? Let us go on outside like we want to? Let Axel go home? We only—" A snort of irritation interrupted Amy. A second man spoke, but not to her. "This is a waste of time. We've learned all we need to from them. You will eventually realize, Chairman, that I am right. Intelligence at their level is no advantage, nor is it amusing. It is simply a burden to them and to trouble us. Disposal is our best means of security." There was an interval during which several muffled voices argued, and then Amy heard the chairman say, "You may leave, Radner." "They'll never belong. Not up here or down there," the voice called Radner was angry. "They won't belong, and they won't forget, or forgive. They look harmless now because they're children, but they will grow up and become revolutionaries. You cannot afford to make exceptions, Chairman. You've never served sub-level. I spent 5 years down there among those sullen animals. One hint of weakness and they'll turn—" The wall speaker woofed with feedback and went off. Axel waited a minute and then sat down at the end of the recliner. "I wonder who he was," he said. "Somebody who doesn't like us," Amy said calmly as she gathered up the carrot sticks from the floor. "Do you want this?" She had to remember the name. "Carrots?" And when he shook his head, she ate them. "How can you do that?" he said, watching her. "The floor's clean." "No, I mean, how can you eat now? That man just said he thought we should be disposed of. Don't you know what that means? They let us hear that on purpose. They could have turned him off." Amy nodded, thinking. She munched for a time, like a meditative rabbit, then said innocently, "I wonder why they don't like us so much. Not just us, but people where we come from. The woman on the ramp said people down below were nasty, and Radner said animals, like we were rats. People hate rats. People are afraid of rats." She stared up at the window as if lost in thought. "Maybe they're afraid of us, the people in the levels under them." Axel started to grin at that idea. "Oh, sure," he said, and then thought about it. "Maybe." "They're probably still watching us, huh?" Amy pointed a carrot stick at the window. "Probably. I'd like to see what they look like." "I'd like to get out of here." Axel got up and began to pace about the little room with the purposeless energy of a caged thing. "I don't care what they look like. We finally find the surface and I can see the sun, and then they pin us up in this box." An hour passed and seemed like 4, and then without warning the door opened. A young man stood there, arms folded on his chest, one shoulder resting against the frame. He was dressed as they were, in white, but his shoes were black and he wore a wide black sash belt with a handgun tucked into it. He was short and muscular with wide, blunt hands, like the paws of a badger. He looked first at Amy, then Axel. Amy returned stare for stare. He had pale green eyes. She'd never seen green eyes before. She brushed the crumbs off, stood up, and went over for a closer look. "You're not going to bite me, are you?" he asked, but he didn't seem worried by the possibility. What was better, for an adult he didn't seem hostile, not even a little bit. "No, not unless you grab me." She stopped more than arm's length from him. "I won't touch you," he promised. "Unless you try to run, then I will have to kill you." "Are those your real eyes?" "Yes." "They're pretty." "Thank you." He pushed himself erect with a slight thrust of his shoulder. "My name is Elton. I'm your guard. Please come with me." "Where are we going?" "It doesn't matter," Axel said quickly, "so long as we get out of here." Elton led them out into a deserted hallway and onto the street. The park was nowhere in sight. Amy stopped and turned to look back at the block they had come out of. It looked like all the other structures around. "What is this place?" she asked. "The security center." "Are we in the same dome where they caught us?" "No." She waited for him to say more, and when he didn't, she commented, "There aren't many people here." "No. This way, please," he said, and pointed to a small blue van-like car parked nearby. "Open the door, please, Axel. Take the rear seat. Now you, Amy." "Where are we going?" Amy asked again. Elton hesitated, then said, "No place bad. Get in." They were no more than seated when a clear panel rose to separate passengers from driver. The children exchanged worried glances and then resigned themselves to the fact that they were in this level's equivalent of a cage. Elton eased himself into the driver's seat and the car began to move. The sensation of being carried in a wheeled vehicle was novel to Amy. She wasn't frightened by it, but it made her feel helpless, as if she were a thing with no will. "You'll get to like it," Axel assured her, but she wasn't convinced. The drug was wearing off and depression was setting in. There were round windows on either side of the seat. As they looked out, the city did seem endless. One dome much like the next, as dull in its own neat way as the lower levels. Elton drove on, not talking, going always in the same direction. The motion of riding began to make Amy feel queasy, and she closed her eyes. "At least we're going west," she heard Axel say as she drifted into a doze. The light outside was as dim as the lower levels when she woke up. The car was still moving. Axel was glued to his window. Elton slumped in the driver's seat as if he were tired. There were a lot of people on the streets, and the windows in the tiered blocks were yellow with light. The dome roof was more visible now, reflecting back the lights beneath. What made it get darker? "It's night," Axel said. "The sun went down." She knew she was supposed to understand that, but she didn't. In her world, day and night defined time, not light level. "A lot of buildings have fallen down," Axel pointed out his window. "Like that one." She leaned over to see, but they had already passed. "It's been like that the last 10 domes or so. The people still look the same, well-fed, big and clean. And when we go through the glass tunnels, you can see domes over across that don't have any lights on." Amy puzzled over that. "If they got the shaking up here at night, that might shake things to pieces? The city's old." Axel shook his head. "This part's much newer than where we came from. See, there's a big one." He leaned back so she could see where an entire section of the dome's interior structure had fallen to ruin. Walls thrust up at odd angles, and ramps reached up to end in midair. Barricades lined the street. Even that portion of the park and promenade was gone. The area was deserted. "Do you think he'll tell us what happened here?" Axel pointed to the driver. "Not the truth. Authorities never answer questions. They just talk until you get tired of listening and give up." If their driver heard this exchange, he gave no sign of it, and when they fell silent again, the only sound in the van was the steady hiss of wheels on the pavement. The fewer people in the dome, the less traffic, the faster he drove. Amy closed her eyes and listened. She could tell each time they left the dome and entered a glass tunnel by the increased roar in the smaller enclosure. They were in a dome when the van stopped. Elton got out. "Wait here," he said. The van roof shut off their forward view. From Axel's window, they saw the guard walk over to a small square building and disappear inside. The area was so quiet they could hear his footsteps echo. Something began to make a metallic screeching sound. "What is that?" Amy whispered. "It sounds like a metal rolled-up door," Axel said. "Maybe they're taking us inside that building, but I can't see it opening anywhere." That made no sense to Amy. She peered out the window on her side and saw the dome wall curving up over a stretch of bedraggled park. Standing water reflected lights from somewhere. The place looked deserted. "Where do you think we are?" she asked. "I don't know." Long minutes passed, and they waited. Elton didn't come back. An hour passed. They tried to talk to fill the time and keep from worrying. Neither could think of much to say. Elton still didn't come back. Amy curled up on the seat, closed her eyes, and listened to Axel fidgeting. Finally his movements stopped, and then the sound of his breathing told her he had fallen asleep. "Amy?" The whisper in her ear tickled and she reached up to scratch. "Amy, wake up." Harsh gray light flooded her eyes as she opened them and made her squint against the glare. Her neck hurt from sleeping at a funny angle. "It's dawn. The guard didn't come back." She turned her head and found herself nose to nose with Axel. "He's gone. I can't see anyone around here. Anywhere." She was too groggy to think. "You mean he just left us? Locked in here?" "The van door's unlocked." She stared at him. "Come on, Amy, wake up." Axel shook her shoulder. "We've got to get out of here while we can." "Yeah, okay." She sat up. "You're sure?" "Come on!" He slid off the seat and out the van door to the pavement. "Wait!" She reached out and caught his arm, then crawled out to stand beside him. "Maybe it's a trick. Maybe they want us to try to escape so they can shoot us, where there's nobody to see. They could have done that last night. Why wait until now? Come on." "Shh!" She heard another sound, a strange chirping noise. "What's that?" "Sparrows. They're inside the dome. That means there has to be an opening somewhere." "Sparrows?" "Birds." She vaguely remembered the word from Janet's book, and a picture of a pretty pink and white thing called a cockatoo. She remembered how funny the word had sounded to her then. But birds lived outside. How did they get in here? "That's what I'm trying to tell you," he said impatiently. "They got in from outside somewhere. Come on, let's look." Amy hesitated. The van doors being unlocked was no accident, she was sure of that. Elton or somebody wanted them to get out. But for what purpose? And where was he now? "There!" Axel's triumphant whisper made her jump. "It was a roll-up door I heard." He punched her arm in jubilation. "Look!" Where the glass tunnel to the next dome should have been, she saw a dark oblong of ribbed metal that looked like an afterthought, a makeshift construction to close a hole. Except not all the hole was closed. At the bottom of the oblong was an opening. "Let's go," Axel whispered more urgently. Still she hesitated, until he yanked her arm and pulled her into a run toward the door. She didn't try to break free, but she did expect at any moment to hear a warning shot, or the high-pitched whine of a laser, or something. This was much too neat, too easy. Something was wrong. Maybe the authorities wanted to give them the hope of escape, and then catch them again to prove there was no hope, like the reinforcement tapes in the learning centers.